So how do you know that a project is a success for the community itself?
We're not as cool as we look. We're actually incredibly nerdy. And so we actually retain some of our financing for monitoring and evaluation.
Interesting, okay.
60% of our funding comes from fee-for-service clients. These are foundations, corporations, or other NGOs that want us to build schools or health clinics.
Yeah.
And part of what our work is to do due diligence. Is the building being utilized the way it had been intended?
Right.
And going back 6 months, a year, sometimes even 3 years after completion, and figuring out, is there a way that we can finesse the building so it adequately responds to the changes that have happened?
And are you learning lessons from project to project that, you got something wrong on project X, but gee, when you reached project Z, that had a kind of transformative effect on how you approached something?
Yeah, I think the phrase we use in our office is that we screwed the pooch. It's a British phrase, probably not very politically correct, but it means like when we really screw up a project, it's more important to share that than all the successes, and that when we do these evaluations and we see, did we use the right materials? Did we use the right contractors?
Right.
What was our process in payments? And some of it is very basic, fundamental building systems that when they go wrong, it negatively affects that community. It's not like you can go back to the donor and say, hey, could you give me another $5,000?
Right.
When you don't put in a water system correctly, it's going to affect the lives of the people you're serving.
And is that open source attitude to kind of learning and information and post-occupancy evaluation and so forth, does that come, when you partner with an architecture firm, is there occasionally a kind of culture clash with firms that aren't used to that kind of approach?
You'd think there would be.
Yeah.
But, I was just mentioning earlier, we just formed a partnership with Toyo Ito.
Yes.
And we're going to be doing...
Tell everyone about that project, yes, very cool.
It's an amazing project in Japan, post-tsunami project, and we've been building a lot with a lot of kind of fishing communities and affected communities, and one of the architects that was selected to work on our project is Toyo Ito, which...
Who none of you have heard of.
If you've heard of,
obscure...
And we met with him last week in Japan to do kind of a design review, and the entire firm was incredibly excited to get involved in this project.
Cool.
Like, this is the one point that you can put your emotion, your passion, and your skills towards something that's going to really make a difference.
Right.
And so whatever kind of cultural differences there are, they're kind of left at the door.
Yes.
And the same goes for ego. Like, some of the architects that you imagine that might have a really big ego, the moment they start doing kind of community-based programs, that just stays outside.
Humility is part of the equation.
Yeah, because you realize that your client is not the funder, your client is the people you're serving.
Yes, yes, and you can look past the vanity to the...
And so in the case of Toyo, both himself and his staff have spent an incredible amount of time at the school that we're helping rebuild. They've done over 30 visits in the last year, which,
that's intense.
How many site visits does an architect, do for a small project that's worth less than $200,000?
Right, exactly.
He's doing it because he really cares about this town, he cares about the growth of this town, and in a way, this is your moment to say, I'm a New York architect, I care about families that were affected in the Rockaways in Staten Island, and I want to give my professional services. And so, you can't have that kind of, you can't have any of that kind of bureaucracy or that systems thinking that would normally come into play.
So, okay, I'm here, I'm on the trade show floor at AIA Convention 2013, and maybe I don't have control of a practice of my own. I can't be making strategic decisions about pro bono, not pro bono.
Right.
I've got a busy life. How do I contribute, volunteer, participate if there are all these constraints in my life, in my day-to-day life?
Okay, there's 3 simple ways to contribute, right? If you're not a Pritzker Prize-winning architect, or you don't own a firm like Gensler, you can volunteer in a chapter. We've got over almost 60 cities around the world that have chapters. The New York chapter is almost 1,000 professionals.
Wow.
In Denver, they're working on a project here to build an outdoor classroom, so even right here in town, there's a chapter. You can donate a day of design, which is what we call it. We figured out it costs us about $100 to have a licensed professional architect work for a day in the field with a community. And so you can either donate like $100, which equals to a day of design, or you can figure out how to take a sabbatical or work with your firm and say, look, you know, I know we're short in work. Is there a way that we can offer my services for the next 3 months to a project that's really meaningful? So in a way that, for a principle of a firm, that brings retention rates up, because you can say, look, we are in this crunch where we don't have enough work on, but we're going to sequester one of our staff members to Architecture of Humanity to work on a project.